With just 3 weeks to go before the election, the outcome is of keen interest to those all over the world, not least in Africa. One of the biggest challenges that the US is trying to take on there is the HIV/AIDS epidemic. A country that's combated HIV with some success, Uganda. The first case of AIDS in Uganda was diagnosed in 1982. 4 years later, nearly a third of Ugandans were infected. Uganda launched a countrywide AIDS education program in 1987. And by 2001, HIV cases had fallen to 5% of the population, partly due to the deaths of AIDS patients, but also as a result of prevention efforts. Now, AIDS infections are growing once again in Uganda, and the availability of retroviral drugs may partly be to blame. Some say a shift towards US-backed abstinence programs is also having an effect. Al Jazeera's continuing series, US 08, The World Watches, focuses on Uganda now, where Haru Mutasa reports on US policy and AIDS.
It's a long wait, but they need the drugs. Missing just one dose means gambling with their lives. Sharon is 25 years old and HIV positive.
I had gone for that pain, which was paining my neck. Then I was advised by the doctor to get tested. Then I got that I was positive.
Money donated by the US in 2003 to fight HIV and AIDS has now run out. Even though funds approved by the US Congress have tripled, these people will only see it in 2009. And they fear it'll come with strings attached. In the past, organizations had to make abstinence and fidelity programs a priority. Distribution of condoms, though encouraged, was not given the same amount of attention. And even though the abstinence clause has been removed, Daisy and McLaren fear things won't change. Because of their profession, they say they're stigmatized.
We're the people who are in the system. We're the people who have sex every day, and we need the condoms. Because if you don't have the condoms, we shall spread the virus.
Critics of the US initiative suggest the reason why commercial sex workers are excluded could have something to do with conservative views on religion and morality. Even though infection rates dropped a few years ago in Uganda, numbers are climbing again. So why the sudden increase?
More and more emphasis was put on drugs, and less emphasis was put on prevention. You understand? So you're increasing the number, you measure your success in terms of how many people you have put on drugs. But you also forget that if you do not counteract the number of new infections that are taking place, you'll never catch up with the curve.
US donors seem to have taken this into account, but this doesn't mean attitudes on the ground will change overnight. Some religious groups still preach abstinence.
And this is prime time at the pool. It's basically an abstinence rally where young people are encouraged not to have sex until they're married. The distribution and use of condoms is also frowned upon by the local pastor here, because he believes if you hand these out to young people, it encourages them to be promiscuous and spread HIV and AIDS.
Across Africa, the developing world, we have a problem that higher condom numbers do not correspond with lower HIV. We actually see the opposite. Higher condom numbers correspond with higher HIV/AIDS.
With poverty forcing many women onto the streets, AIDS activists want US funding for HIV and AIDS to not pick and choose who gets help over who doesn't. But even if this happens, America's economic crisis could affect how much money Africa gets. Some are skeptical. Will tackling the epidemic still remain a priority for America's next president? Haru Mutasa, Al Jazeera, Kampala, Uganda.